Hey everyone, I am working today with some UV resin because it's really cold right now, and epoxy resin that I usually use to make bigger projects, it's really cold, and so it doesn't work very well in the cold weather. And I don't really like to turn my heater on because I'm already hot all the time, so I don't really run my heater, so it's definitely not a good temperature to work with epoxy. So today I'm working with my UV resin, and I can just stick that under the lamp to harden the projects. And I'm also using, because this is a new mold for me, and I really like most of the shapes. I'm not too crazy about some of them, but most of the shapes I like. But they're very thin, like the heart earrings that I'm working on in this video. And because the lines are very, very skinny, I don't want to use the cup to pour into the holes, only because I make a complete mess. I am a messy person. So I try to eliminate some of the mess by using things that will help me not make such a mess. So I don't exactly know what these are called, the official name, but I just call them the little plastic suction things, because I don't know their names, but plastic suction thingies work for me. So even though I still make a mess, as you can see, it's not as much as if I would try to pour the resin right out of the cup. So I have to take my time and work a little slower than normal for some of these shapes, because they are very thin. And here I'm using the lighter to pop some of the bubbles that come up. On my bigger projects that I use epoxy resin for, I will usually spray it with alcohol. Usually it has to be above 90% alcohol. And so that if I don't use, I either use alcohol or my heat gun for bigger projects. But when it comes to epoxy resin, UV resin, like this, I don't really like to use the alcohol, even if I wait a little while to try to make sure the alcohol has dissipated. It still winds up leaving a very crinkly design in whatever shape I'm trying to do. So I usually don't use the alcohol so much for my UV resin, but you do have to be careful when you're using a lighter or heat with the silicone molds. Even though they can withstand a little heat, you don't want to leave the heat on them, because I have ruined a few of my molds by leaving the heat on them, even though it wasn't long. It was only for a second. Sometimes maybe I was too close, I don't know, but then I wind up heating up my mold I heat up my mold, and it winds up sticking to whatever project I'm working on. So I have definitely ruined at least 2 of my molds that way, or 2 shapes, should I say. The whole mold wasn't bad. So here I try not to leave it on there just a second, or not even a second. And I don't put it in, it's kind of hard to tell in the video, but I am not putting it very close to the mold. So now I'm going to stick them under the lamp and set the timer. And once they're done, I have to flip them over because you still have to do the underside, which is why when you do epoxy resin, you want clear molds. So now that I've done both sides, I can pull them out. I'm not done with them. I am gonna put them under the lamp again because some of them are, some of the shapes in this heart they're still a little flat, but usually I like to have a doming effect on the jewelry that I make. So I have to add some clear UV resin on top, and it is going to give each shape a doming effect. And you want to make sure that the UV resin that you use doesn't have a lot of shrinkage, because UV resin, some of them shrink a lot. Once you put them under the lamp, it makes the epoxy will shrink, but you want to make sure that you get one that doesn't have high shrinkage. And this one's actually pretty good. This one doesn't have, it has very, very little shrinkage, but you still want to make sure you have enough to make the doming effect, but not so much that once you put it under the lamp, now it's busting out the sides, and then now you just have resin gushing out of your piece. And I'm using, again, a toothpick. I do have silicone pins, but I don't know where they are at the moment. They're under some of these projects, so I'm using a toothpick. But again, I don't want to pour it on top, and other resin makers may have other tips that may be helpful. This works for me just because I know I don't have steadiness in my hand sometimes, and I don't have and I just make more of a mess when I try to pour it. And these pieces are so tiny that it just makes more sense, and I don't want to cover the holes. So I want to make sure I get around the hole, but not in the hole that the jump ring is going to go into when I put the earrings together. So the toothpick works for me, but you know, everybody is different, and you have to use what works for you. But on some pieces, the toothpick works. If I knew where my epoxy pins were, I'd use that. So again, under the lamp, and it's done. So here it is complete. I have the backs on them. I have put them together, and they should have had the big black heart in the middle, but I didn't know how to put them together. So I used some other hearts and took what was supposed to be the middle and just made a different pair of earrings.